In this podcast episode, Tucker Carlson speaks with Steve Toth, a Texas state representative who is mounting a primary challenge against Congressman Dan Crenshaw in Texas's heavily Republican Congressional District 2. Steve Toth begins by reflecting on his initial support for Dan Crenshaw during Crenshaw's 2018 congressional campaign. At the time, Crenshaw appeared as a rising star, a Navy SEAL war veteran who positioned himself as an anti-establishment disruptor willing to drain the swamp. He came across as tough, principled, and ready to challenge entrenched political corruption. Toth admits to feeling a sort of man crush on Crenshaw and actively helped mobilize Tea Party support to boost his election prospects. However, this early enthusiasm gave way to growing disappointment as Crenshaw quickly became emblematic of the very Washington swamp he promised to fight. Rather than championing grassroots conservative values or addressing the urgent local issues of his district in Montgomery County, a notably conservative red county in Texas, Crenshaw reportedly slipped into the establishment's fold, aligning himself with lobbyists and party leadership that prioritize their own agendas. Toth characterizes Crenshaw's approach as becoming a leader of the problem, reflecting a betrayal of conservative grassroots voters who feel ignored or betrayed. One of the most striking criticisms Toth levels against Crenshaw is his near-exclusive focus on foreign policy issues, particularly the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. According to Toth, Crenshaw's priorities do not align with the pressing concerns of his constituents, notably the severe issues surrounding the Texas-Mexico border. While Texas struggles with illegal immigration, border crime, and the related fiscal and social strains, reflected in staggering statistics such as 58% of births in Texas being Medicaid funded, Crenshaw is accused of being obsessed with Ukraine's territorial integrity. Toth finds it perplexing and offensive that a congressman representing a district grappling daily with border crises would prioritize geopolitical interests tied to Eastern Europe while neglecting open border issues at home. Furthermore, Toth reveals evidence suggesting that Crenshaw's campaign funding heavily involves foreign lobbies interested in his stance toward Ukraine and other international matters, revealing potential conflicts of interest. This foreign backing contrasts starkly with the America First rhetoric often espoused in conservative circles, prompting Toth to dub Crenshaw's foreign policy America Last. Crenshaw's stance also manifests in moments like avoiding visits to the Texas border when fellow lawmakers and officials were present for fact-finding alongside ICE and Border Patrol agents and ranchers. Toth relates that Crenshaw has repeatedly downplayed or dismissed concerns about the border crisis, despite clear empirical and anecdotal evidence of growing social, economic, and security problems. In one town hall, Crenshaw reportedly snapped at questioners, challenging the bipartisan Senate border bill, which opponents argue actually facilitates increased immigration and processed entry of thousands daily. Delving beyond policy, Toth ventures a sympathetic but serious assessment of Crenshaw's personal struggles. He conjectures that Crenshaw may be mentally damaged as a result of his military service, and that his hostile, thin-skinned reactions to criticism signal deeper unresolved issues. Toth stops short of condemnation, expressing compassion regarding Crenshaw's behavior, including instances where Crenshaw aggressively reacted to a young girl challenging a statement he made about Jesus on a podcast. This incident, which went viral, exemplifies Crenshaw's perceived inability to engage humbly or respectfully with constituents challenging his public comments. Instead of clarifying or conceding ambiguity, Crenshaw responded defensively and harshly, further eroding his image as a reasonable and accessible elected official. Toth views these outbursts, as well as Crenshaw's dismissive posture toward legitimate questions about intelligence agencies' political interference, as deeply troubling manifestations of a damaged political figure. Toth offers a detailed critique of the way money and insider interests operate in Washington and Austin alike, with Crenshaw serving as a prime example. Allegations of Crenshaw benefiting from stock trades informed by classified briefings during the COVID-19 pandemic underscore concerns about insider knowledge and corruption. While Crenshaw vehemently defends himself and attacks critics, Toth deems the situation illustrative of systemic problems wherein members of Congress capitalize on privileged information, undermining public trust. This financial entanglement mirrors the wider pattern of politicians courting lobby money, amassing personal wealth, and becoming beholden to establishment interests rather than constituents. Toth contrasts the rhetoric of representing the people with the reality of grifting and careerism that dominate. He insists this dynamic fuels the deepest source of cynicism and disillusionment among patriotic voters who genuinely want to see government serve the people. Through their discussion, it becomes clear that Crenshaw's re-election candidacy is both a symptom and cause of broader dysfunction within Texas Republican politics. Toth paints a bleak picture of a party riddled with establishment operatives like Karl Rove and groups such as the Associated Republicans of Texas, ART, working actively to undermine true conservatives in favor of rhinos or establishment-friendly candidates. Toth reveals how lobbying interests aggressively push projects like legalized gambling for profit and political control, often at odds with grassroots conservative values. He also highlights the influence of powerful Republican figures who, despite the party's landslide electoral margins in Texas, collaborate with Democrats to maintain control of legislative leadership and block conservative priorities. Within this context, Toth positions himself and other true conservatives as fighting both the Democrats and a faction of their own party that resists meaningful reform. Issues like banning critical race theory, opposing social transitioning of children, and enforcing border security often stall or are undermined by party insiders focused more on power preservation than principles. Toth underscores the toxic environment inside Austin, where members of the state legislature face pressure and even sexual blackmail if they live in isolation during long sessions. He describes the legislative culture as cutthroat, where cooperation with the establishment involves sacrificing integrity and ideals for committee chairmanships and legislative effectiveness. He also laments the declining conditions in major Texas cities such as Dallas, Houston, and Austin, citing growing homelessness, crime, and decay alongside governmental inaction. Despite occasional measures, like anti-camping laws in Austin, major urban centers suffer neglect, reflecting a lack of true America First priorities. Toth criticizes politicians like Crenshaw for ignoring these local concerns while fixating on foreign aid and international entanglements. Despite the grim diagnosis of contemporary politics, Toth remains hopeful. He views genuine conservatives like himself as part of a necessary spiritual renewal that can restore America to its founding principles, grounded in faith, liberty, and constitutional values. Toth expresses admiration for former President Trump's approach of leadership through action rather than rhetoric, and hopes his own campaign can reflect similar resolve. Challenging Crenshaw is, for Toth, symbolic of reclaiming genuine democratic accountability and showing voters that incumbents can be unseated when they betray core conservative ideals. He anticipates a tough primary marked by heavy spending and multiple opponents, but believes grassroots energy and principled conservatism will prevail.